Hello, I'm Nan Simonson, and I'm glad you're here. Um, Today I'm going to talk about my win, but it's not about me. It's about what there is to learn from it. Let me tell you what I mean. Actually, I've had a few wins, and this applies all the way down the line. Well, my big win, coming almost a year ago, was this: the publication of my book, Aging Powerfully. That was December 27th, so not quite a year ago. And what I'm going to say today apply to that very much so. Uh, my latest win, my most recent win, was that this past Sunday, and today is Tuesday, October 26th, 21, I ran my first 10K race. I in July, the end of July, saw that my favorite, well, I'll call it a hot spot, but it's actually our historical, one of our most important historical um, places in Riverside, California, and that is our Mission Inn. On an annual basis, does a 10K. It helps as a fundraiser. And they didn't do it in 2019. We must not have done it in 2020 either. And so here it is, 2021, and they were doing a half marathon, 10K, 5K, both there, or heading out from nearby, and virtually. I saw this and I checked off the box for 10K run, paid for it, gave a donation as well. And that was at the end of July. I had never run. I was not a runner. Thought I couldn't even run down the block. I thought I wasn't built for it. I didn't know how to breathe through it. It just wasn't a thing. And then I signed up and it became a thing that I had to succeed at because, for one thing, I told everybody. I told everybody that I had signed up for this race and I was in training, and that was in July. And here it was, October 24th, the day of the race. I hadn't run at all prior to the race for 11 days because 2 months before I injured a knee, not running, but I took a Pilates class, heard it. I was at a wellness resort called Rancho La Puerta, and every morning we would do mountain climbs, and not climbing this way, but steep, rocky paths going anywhere from 3.5 miles to 5.5 to 7.5. And every morning I was out there, even with a hurt knee. Well, by the time the thing was over, I was limping and I hadn't had knee problems. So I had that to add to this experience, this crummy knee. And finally, as we were and then I went back to Rancho La Puerta, uh, was it last week and a half ago, to act as Chef AJ's sous chef at her classes that she held there, 3 courses. And I sort of stumbled on a path that I was lightly jogging on, and I didn't fall flat, but I had to catch myself, that thing where you run, 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 not to fall flat. Well, totally messed up that same knee. And so I was just, anyway, I was walking with a limp, couldn't walk up a step, couldn't walk up a curb, certainly couldn't walk upstairs. And this was going on. I had physical therapy before the run. I had an x-ray the Friday before that Sunday, fearing that because it hurt so much, possibly there was something that would be permanently damaged if I put that kind of pressure on it. And finally, everyone said, I don't know if I would do it if I were you, but if you're going to do it, because I kept saying, I'm going to do this, then do it cautiously. And I kept thinking, even the night before, I'm going to take off for the 6.2 miles. No, I wasn't thinking that I was going to, but I worried. Take off for the 6.2 miles, and somewhere in the middle, Tim was going to have to come and find me because I was going to be sitting on a curb off the side of the road with a leg that was totally broken, not working anymore. And that didn't happen. As a matter of fact, for days before, I pictured myself, for a week before, I pictured myself on the route, running and running well and having no pain. And that's exactly what happened. It wasn't quite no pain. I had my leg brace on and all of that. But okay, so I finished the race. I was in the division of 70 to 74-year-olds and a female, and there were only 6 of us that did this race. But I was number 4. Now, that's not a big deal. My time was 13 minutes 30 seconds per mile. That's not very good. A really good runner does 7 or 8, 5 or 6. A moderate runner, female, does maybe 10, and here I am at 13.30. But that wasn't the point. And this is what this is all about. I now am sort of basking in the glow of having completed something that I set myself up for with enthusiasm and, quite frankly, some bit of bravery and some naivety as well. Now I know you that when it comes to physical feats, you should go at them somewhat slowly, because I think I aggravated the problem that I had created when I got the sore knee by putting too much pressure and too quickly. Some say you don't increase distance by more than 10% a week. There are all kinds of things that experienced exercisers will say, but again, not the point. The point is, I did a thing I set out to do. The point is, I came in feeling proud that I had done it, that I was able to complete it, and that I was part of this excited group of people. There were 500 people that had signed up for the 10K alone. Then there was the 5K. Then there was the half marathon. So it was party central down there. The races began at 6:30. My race at 8:30. And I was the number 4 female. And that's really cool. But out of 6, you might say, who, who cares? The point is, there were hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of females still sitting on a couch somewhere that didn't even try to run this race. All right, we 6 tried at this age, 70 to 75. That felt really good, but still, this isn't the point, and this is what I'm getting to. I was, and words were put to this by someone I admire a lot. The person I admire a lot, that I do pay attention to, and I've quoted several times, is Dr. Andrew Huberman. He is a neuroscientist and a ophthalmologist, a neuro-ophthalmologist. You know, the eyes are part of the brain. They just stick out of the skull. And he has his own lab, the Huberman Lab at Stanford University. He's a professor of neuroscience or neurobiology, as well as ophthalmology at Stanford, and he has his own lab. And I love hearing his podcasts. He does free podcasts constantly with neuroscience to help us maneuver our lives. Well, anytime I walk or anytime I get on my bike and exercise, I listen to podcasts, and boom. And quite often it's very serendipitous how he'll be speaking about something that I'm interested in. There's a podcast, and you may want to find this because it'll back up what I'm saying in his words, which are better than mine. And it's just a clip of a podcast, but the original podcast, and this is what I think you would have to look for, is neuroscientist, and then colon, first hour of the morning. And then it says greatest clips. The interviewer is a fellow named Lewis, Lewis, Howes, Howes. So neuroscientist, colon, first hour of the morning. It's only a 19-minute, 26-second clip from a much longer interview, because he didn't even talk about first hour in the morning. We didn't get to that. There are 22 1,000 views of this. And he's talking about now what the point of today is. Didn't I just go on and on? And that is dopamine. That is, as he says, the strongest neurotransmitter that we have that predicts and dictates activity. Predicts and dictates. Dopamine is a reward neurotransmitter. When we do something good that we either perceive as good and sometimes that we're even unaware of, for example, in a win, run across the finish line, dopamine is just surging. The other way that dopamine surges is a less obvious and actually insidious way that I've spoken about and that he has actually detailed, and that is that we have in our stomach receptors for sugar, and when sugar is introduced to these receptors in the stomach, it sends a signal to the brain, and our brain releases dopamine. So when we say that the food producers know how to hijack our taste buds, by golly, they do. They know through lots of research how to combine foods, fat, sugar, and salt in such a way that our body just lights up, and especially the sugar, there's a dopamine high that becomes very predictably replicatable um, by combining foods in a certain way. So that's a completely different subject. But the dopamine that we are most aware of is what we do to make ourselves feel great. And anytime we have a win of any kind, we get a surge of dopamine. When we taste food that we like, we get a surge of dopamine. And sometimes, as I just referenced, we get a surge of dopamine with foods that we may not even realize have anything to do with our then desire for the replication of that experience, because sugar is now, and I challenge you to discount what I'm saying. You go to a store, I'll finish that sentence. Sugar is now put in almost everything. Ketchup, pasta sauce, pickles, hamburger buns, French fries. Sugar is put in just about everything. We don't realize why we want it so often. That's one of the reasons we want it so often, because dopamine does two things. It rewards, but it also then sets up a drive for a replication of that feeling. It's actually part of our hunter-gatherer and ancestral survival, that we knew to go after what we found that was a good thing for us because it kept us alive. So what does all of this have to do with going for the win? Okay, and this was what Dr. Huberman was making a point of. His strongest sentence in this conversation with Lewis Howes was, don't overemphasize the win. The win, that high that we get, that moment of accomplishment, is so controlled in terms of space and time. It's just a small window of a occurrence that it's very easy for us to feel blank and empty afterwards if we put everything into the wind, because it comes, it goes, and it's gone. As he said, and I examined this in myself, and it's absolutely so, put the dopamine, in other words, realize it and feel it and see it in the striving toward what we are going for that ultimately gives us the win. in my own case, for example, I decide that I'm going to go for a 10K. I got a little bit of a dopamine rush for that because look at me, I'm going to try something new and isn't that exciting? But then immediately I set to work on it. Looked up things on, Googled running, and came up with recommendations that helped me understand how to go about it, some of which I didn't do, like the 10% or like the walk, run, rock, run. If I could run a half a mile, I would then go for 3/4. Then I'd go for one. Then I'd go for 1.5. But that's also part of the enjoying the dopamine for each one of these small, incremental, meaning nothing to anybody else, wins. And that was exactly how it felt. I downloaded an app called Runkeeper. Runkeeper would tell me if I had my highest elevation climb that day, if I had my fastest run, if I had my furthest run. And those little blips, you just had, this was your best in distance, this was your best in speed, um, this was your fastest to this point. Uh, those little wins were constant and actually gave me, if you really, if I evaluate it that way, more of a hit and more pride because I got those regularly. I'm not going to have another win like this. And what I mean is, I ran the race is done, it's done. There's nothing more to that. I could milk it and milk it to pieces, which I am right now to a degree. Because I posted a few things about it. But it's coming back to this. This was a process. July, August, September, October. All right, only 3 months. A woman in her 70s who only eats plants, who could not run, ran 6.2 and ran it decently, 13.30 seconds, minute mile. Um, that was all right. Number 4 in her division. That was all right. Nothing great. But that wasn't the point. The point was out of nowhere, something was created. And it was the striving that for 3 months kept me, I'm going to call it high. Even though there were periods of hesitation and fear because I had been hurt. I wasn't sure where this was going. For 11 days before the race, I didn't run one step because my knee hurt too badly and we didn't know what to do, and the physical therapist hadn't examined it yet, and then the x-ray hadn't come until Friday 2 days before, and yes, there was fluid in the knee, and what should we do? Well, in other words, when I took off, I didn't know if I could do it because I hadn't done it for 11 days. Um, all of this added to the striving and the story and the glory and the dopamine, that wonderful neurotransmitter of success that then leads you to strive for more of that again and again and again and again. I had a great story from one of our patients today, and I'm not telling tales out of school because there's no names here, but I work with a marvelous founding member of the College of Lifestyle Medicine, Dr. Wayne Dysinger, in his lifestyle medical group, several physicians, a lot of patients, and I am, and I have been for going on 4 years now, the uh, group, one of the, uh, what do we call us? I was going to say accountability group. It's not accountability. It's just support group. It's a support group that I do every Tuesday morning. And I've done this for now, again, going on 4 years. And we had a nice full group today. And one of our members, who is, I think, 84, is one of the most positive people I've ever met because she continues every day to find the high in everything. I made the best soup today. I took this walk and it was the prettiest sunrise. It's really fun to hear this. Well, she told a story. She had, because she had played canasta before COVID. Everything stopped, and she had gotten decently good, and then everything had stopped. She came back to the group, and she was rusty, and she was playing in a, I don't know anything about canasta, but she was playing with a member that was a little bit stiff and not very responsive, and it made her feel a little bit like she had to perform especially well, because this person wasn't critical as much as just kind of terse. And she has shown up every day, no matter what. She showed up every time they were playing because she wanted to get better. Every move she made, again, the striving, every move she made taught her something and made her feel better. Well, today, or it was yesterday, she played and she had a hand, and I guess there's a partner across from you, and she let the partner know what her hand was, and the partner stood up and said, this person, the name, is one of the best players in the house. She has one of the best hands I've ever seen, or something like that. And the woman who up to that point hadn't even been that friendly smiled and congratulated her, and the whole room kind of exploded with applause. Okay, that was the win. That's a win. But more important than that was the striving. Her showing up every day, her feeling the glory of these minute improvements that were ultimately wins. That's where you put your dopamine, the attention of your dopamine in those wins, rather than making it about the long game final accomplishment, ooh-ha, brouhaha win. It's about where you came from, what it taught you, how it felt, who you became in it, and that made the win well worthwhile, far more worthwhile than putting all of the attention into the end result. Okay, at the end of the race, it felt really good to have a medal, to have my bib, to say, look, I had done it. Like this person suddenly having the whole room acknowledge she's one of the best players now. That lasted that much time. Instead, we both had months and months and months of becoming a thing that we're even more proud of. So attach the dopamine high to what came before the win, and it sets you up to want it again and again, because your brain is wired to encourage and demand our repeat of those dopamine moments, again, for the survival of the species. Let me make sure I'm going to say everything I want to say. Um, okay, if you attach only to the celebration, we could forget the joy of the effort and the increase in skills, attach it to everything that came before the win. And I think that's all I want to tell you. He said, this is how we train our mind for regular wins. Our goals should be to get better at what we are trying to accomplish, and see that as the ultimate reason for even trying. So I said at the beginning, and I've been saying all along, think of something, take on something, look for something that would otherwise scare you, and simply decide, you know what, I'm going for this. And throw yourself in there. And then throw yourself in there with effort that you can applaud yourself for, because you applaud yourself, again, your neurotransmitters are never not watching. the the Do you know that even petting your cat, or having your cat rub up, or your animal rub up against you, and cats purr and dogs lick and climb on your lap and sometimes even hug you, even that is a dopamine release, and we want more and more of that. So in other words, this is something that is going on a continuous basis. There are a lot of other neurotransmitters that for example, your serotonin is increased by the soft things in life, but your serotonin doesn't send you off to do things. It's not a striving hormone. It's a chill, relax. You've gotten there. You're with it. You know, kind of a low key thing. Dopamine will actually key epinephrine, which is the brain's modulator that equals adrenaline and get us going and make us move. So why not look for something? As a matter of fact, I'm doing something that sort of scared me to do. Ugh. I guess I can talk about this a little bit. I am on my way to a certification for as an eating disorder coach. I was afraid to go to that because, as some of you know, for 55 years I was bulimic, had an eating disorder that I couldn't get past. Started at 15, ended at 67, a brief break in there, but left it behind now going on 4 years, and comfortably left it behind, not white knuckle. And but I couldn't help people with it because how I stopped with the help of a book, Brain Over Binge, and this is all in my own book, but this isn't a training guide. This just says what I did. I didn't know how, with the help of the book, and I'm completely convinced also with having adopted a whole food plant-based diet, because on whole foods that are plant-based, it's heavy in starches, whole food plant-based starches, and carbohydrates, the starches, are nature's antidepressant. I used to take antidepressants. I did for most of my life. We kept thinking that would make the that in therapy to figure out what was messed up in the way I thought. We thought that would make the eating disorder go away. It never did. Um, None of that actually had anything to do with it in the end. But the book that helped me realize that if you have a thought to do it, doesn't mean you have to act on that thought, and talked about how not to. And then a diet that, with again the starches being in nature's antidepressant and appetite suppressant, because I feared if I ever ate without, anyway, with abandon, that I would blow up like a balloon. None of that happened. As a matter of fact, I've been able to um, fall into a weight that's lower than I've been most of my adult life, eating massive amounts of whole foods, plant-based, that are starches. Big old sweet potatoes with beans on that, and you know, vegan sour cream on that, and on and on. So I'm getting a certification for that, and the reason I even acted as if there was some hesitation is because there's a bit of a risk when you've done something a certain way that worked very well with you, but then you're examining everything about that thing. Wow, what if I realize I did it wrong and I can't keep doing it, or some silly stuff. But I'm taking that on, and I'm looking at every single class and every group call as a win, as I hear things that I'm not familiar with and that I may not be doing the right way. I don't know. But I'm moving forward. So take on something that scares you. Um, Understand the neurotransmitters behind the most obvious, which is it'll take you from here to here. It will give you wins in your life. You'll know if you did once that you can again. That's part of this whole system. And you can live your life on a regular forward trajectory. And I think that's all I have to say to you. I want to thank you for being here or watching. And I hope to see you again soon. Let people know about my social media Power Ager group. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe, and just let us know that we're making a difference, because those of us that are seeing a mission behind letting the world know that we can take control of our health one meal at a time, a good night's sleep at a time, whole food plant based, which is good for us and the planet, and by God, it's good for those animals, 8 billion of them a year that don't have to die. Now I'm getting off base. Okay, goodbye. Thank you for being here.